really sunny. Do you know one of my treats these days? It's when let's say we want to take a shower much later in the day, and then you turn on the shower and then the water is warm. You don't have to turn on the heater because the sun has heated up the water so much. It's one of the little treats that I'm enjoying right now. And
speaking about,
I know that you particularly like this weather. This weather is particularly good on your skin.
well, yeah, well, thank God for good things, don't we? But speaking about weather, have you ever heard of Ikogosi?
Oh, I have.
Okay, well, they call it Ikogosi, warm spring.
Yes.
That's what we're showing you right now.
Oh,
it's in
breathtaking.
Ekiti State. Oh, absolutely. And you know why they call it that? It's the confluence of hot and cold water. Absolutely.
What's the history of this place?
Well, it's got quite a history. But, in terms of that, the nature of the hot and cold, at the temperature, we understand, at the source for the very, very hot one, it's about 70 degrees centigrade.
Oh.
At the source.
At the source.
And then
at the confluence?
Cold is 37 degrees centigrade.
Oh.
So, and they flow side by side.
I know. I've actually been here.
Yeah, but
I drank that water.
Oh,
I'm a daredevil type person. Took a glass and took some of the warm and drank it, and the thing turned my stomach for days.
Oh yeah. Well, good for you.
Turned my stomach for days.
But this is the way to the place, so we can't show you the exact spots.
So this is the resort. So that's what we're looking at here. Is a resort, but you might look at that greenery.
Yeah, so
you can't hear a sound. It's one of the sad things about living in Ikogosi was that when we came into town, you started hearing horn of cars and noise.
And the beauty about this is we can't intrude into people's privacy sometimes, so we have to let that be. So we can't show you that a particular spot or that confluence or where it flows side by side, so that people who go there, because you have to be encouraged to visit such places and then ensure that make tourist sites out of all of these places that we keep showing. So they are bound up north and down south. Whichever way you turn, whichever part of the country you turn to, you've got sites like this. And I mean tourist sites that we can leverage on and ensure things happen.
Ikogosi is a tourist site. People come from around the world to Ikogosi to drink because there are myths around the water. They say there are two women. So the water is
the hunter, wives of the hunter.
Wives of the hunter, yes.
One was what? Temperamental. The other was calm.
Was calm.
So mysteries.
So it's the mystery around it that really draws a lot of people to the place, and it is a tourist attraction, and the Ekiti State government is not doing too badly. I have to say they actually don't do too badly with the preservation of this place. But of course, more has to be done. There's always room for improvement.
And it's apt because now that we're talking about the tax bills and you'll be earning based on consumption, you have to ensure that people can consume things. They come to you. So, for instance, with this kind of places, people coming here, there'll be a lot of consumption going on.
Oh, yes.
And so you can get a lot more money.
It's an ecosystem of its own. And there's a lot of money that it can make.
So they can think outside the box and ensure that this kind of things happen. So, yes, we'll talk about that much later in terms of that tax bill and all of that controversy surrounding it in a moment. But serving you that down south. So wherever you are, whatever your location is, you never know. You never know. We could just bring your location to the limelight. I mean, not any more than you have already. I mean, locals already know those places. But let's bring the world to you. Just give us a shout. We know how to make that happen for you, if you know what we're talking about. Okay, so let's take you through some of the dailies now, highlights of some of the scenarios that played out in the National Assembly with the AFCC and more. Here are some of the dailies this morning. Here are some of the papers we've got for you today. Nigerian Tribune is the first one here. Look at this. Row in Senate over tax reform bills. Ndume, Ningi, battle Deputy Senate President Barrow over appearance of Oyedele Zach in chamber. Bills will ensure sustainable economic growth. Tax Reform Committee Chairman. So that's ascribed to him right there. And beneath that list story, court remands Yaya Bello in AFCC custody to deliver ruling on bail application December 10. So that's what you see right there. And beneath that story, I created more states to erase fear of northern domination, ascribed to Gowan. So make of that what you will. Blueprint outrage as presidential team explains tax reform bills to Senate. The writer here reads, bills may be passed today. So what a time it will be. So all eyes will be on that one. Nigerian News Direct also on the same matter. Tax reforms will ease burden of millions of Nigerian workers, ascribed to the presidency, as FIRS boss canvasses exclusion of vulnerable people in taxation. You need to check who they describe as vulnerable in that one. This Nigeria, tax reform bills throw Senate into rowdy session. Ningi Ndume reject FG's team's admission into debate. Deputy Senate President Barrow overrules, allows government delegation into chamber. And then beneath that list story, 160 million trapped in child labor globally, ascribed to the ILO. New Telegraph, anger, rancor in Senate over tax reform bills. And beneath that one, you see lack of proper documentation. Others, reps summon CBN governor, bank CEOs, probe POS user issues. So, what will this be about now, and how will it eventually turn out? Well, you just have to keep tabs on that one. Look at Vanguard newspaper, also focusing on tax reform bills. Nigerians earning below 1 million naira a year exempted from income tax. Senate to pass bills today. The rider reads here today. And then to electricity matters, reps investigate discos over failure to replace obsolete meters. Yes, they're going down this route again, and so where will they end? It's not the very first time this is there. Daily Trust also not missing out on the tax bills. Their version reads, Senate brushes aside opposition, admits presidential committee to debate proposed reform legislations today. That is their version of the reportage here today. The Guardian newspaper has got a different narrative. 555,000 shareholders forfeit 215 billion naira dividend over costs inflation. May not be a good story, so unfortunate one for them, but that's how they lead here today. Daily Times, Senate summons Works Minister Julius Berger CCECC over Odupani, Calabar Highway. So, and then Business Day, Naira steadies after CBN's rate hike as analysts see currency appreciation in 2025. Make of that what you will. So there are some of the highlights this morning.
Well, those are some of the headlines that we're looking at this morning, but I'm taking a look at the Guardian newspaper today. Quite a number of stories in the news. One that really struck me really was this one from the former president, Yakubu Gowon, where he talked about, he had met a coalition of Northern Democrats, I think that's what they're called. Mm-hmm. And then he talked about state creation. And he said, I created more states to douse fear of Northern domination. Page 3 of The Guardian has more details on that. The reason why I bring this up is because now we are with these states, and we're asking for the viability of these states. You know, it's important. I think former presidents like former President Gowon and other former presidents really need to speak a little bit more. You know, because what's happened in our country is now we look at things and we're wondering, how did this happen? How did we come about so many states? Well, he's explaining that he created more because there was fear of Northern domination, and he wanted everyone to feel like they were a part of governance. All right, so that's happened. Now this is where we are. These states have to become viable. And like Chamberlain said earlier, we're going to be talking about the new tax bills. And if you're going to be earning based on what you're giving, then you really have to find ways that your state can give more. We have a lot of these states right now in the country, a lot of these governors right now, and the onus is on them to create revenue, internally generated revenue at subnational levels, implementation of government policies at subnational level. we just finished talking about the 16 days of advocacy is still on for sexual and gender-based violence. But we still have places where the Violence Against Persons Act have not been put into law. We still have places where it's still being debated. When we're talking about progress as a people, we can be discussing all of that in Abuja, but what happens at the states? So the viability of these states have come into focus right now, and the implementation of policies that are built to develop our country. So these are some of the things that these states and state governors, and if you're living in the states, that accountability mechanism has to be at the back of your mind. Ensure that you are constantly asking, what about this? What about this? What about this law? In places where the VAP Act, for instance, have not been implemented, where are the women there? You know, well, I know that there's a lot of screaming. Scream louder. It's Operation Push. I don't even know we can pray anymore. But just keep pushing until something happens. If there are laws that can help people in the states, ensure that the state assemblies ratify them. Ensure that they are implemented at those levels. That way, we can get the development that we're asking for. We look at states like Lagos and other states that are generating a lot of revenue and doing well. It came from activism. It came from people pushing, demanding. You know, places around the world, Chamberlain, they may not be, you may be looking at the West and thinking that these are better. They're not better people. They're not better than us. They're not more decent than we are. It's the accountability. The accountability mechanism is so strong that you know that when it comes down to it, you'll be accountable to the people. So you stay in line. And I think that's what we have to get to as a country. Ensure that the accountability mechanisms are working. Ask questions, push until you get answers.
Well, I mean, General Gowon's comments quite interesting, but I know that it will spark off a lot of, people looking back at several things.
Oh, yeah.
And even situating it now, because I know that on the floor of the Senate, there's been several moves to revisit the states' creation matter.
Oh, yeah.
And
some people are asking for more states.
There you go.
More states right now.
For instance, I mean, if you look at the Northwest, they've got Adamawa, Bauchi, Borno, Gombe, Taraba, and Yobe. That's 7. Then you look at the South, South, and Southwest, 6.
And then you go to the Southeast,
5. Then you try North Central. Well, 6, but sometimes you see logos and maps. You see FCT in there. Like, what's going on here?
We are the North Central.
So they make it, well, that's 7.
That's
or
7.
6.5.
Yeah, 7.
But you know, interestingly, part of what we should consider moving forward, because now with this economic crunch, everybody's talking about how do you make things more viable. Part of the debate with the tax reform bills, which we'll come to much later in the program, is geared towards such productivity, sales, revenue, all of those things. And then you equally ask yourself, are we actually going to have a conversation, or will the leaders find it important or relevant to see how do you relate with states or zones as economic zones so that they can focus your mainstream economic issues and not necessarily politics.
That is very, very important. I'm gonna write that down, Chamberlain.
Because, I mean,
there. States as economic zones as opposed to political entities.
I think it's once we do that, it changes our mindset, it changes our thinking. Then we can then say, okay, look, if this zone has all of these potentials, how do we leverage on them to ensure that, after all, you have dozens. I'm looking for even superlatives or adjectives to describe unemployed youths in different regions, different parts of this country. Can we afford to keep playing the ostrich when that happens? Because if they are hungry, whether they are your friends or not, I mean, the senator told us yesterday, they attacked his farm. They knew him, they were his friends, but they said, oh God,
we're hungry.
We had no choice.
We had no choice.
We don't hate you or anything, but look, we're just hungry. And that can happen again if there are more idle youths there. And the Senator Sarawa is doing something, and he received more unemployed, young, idle hands who have trooped into the state because they saw what he was doing. What about other states up north? Are they doing the same thing? Down south, are they doing the same things? So at the end of the day, you can't play politics with data.
I mean, it's embarrassing sometimes when you think about the fact that many governors, when you're looking at this massive young population in your state, all you're thinking about is how to use them for politics. They will eat you.
So
eventually they will eat you.
When they say our economy is huge, it's boisterous, we have the numbers, it's not about idle hands. If those numbers are not human capital in terms of trained, you can employ them, they have all the skill sets, it amounts to nothing, absolutely nothing. So you know what they say, a word is enough for the wise.
Exactly.
Well, back in a moment, everyone, stay on with us.
It will be right for any person, whether EFCC chairman or any person for that matter, to tar all lawyers with the bribe of being involved in money laundering. And we issued a statement and we challenged the EFCC chairman to come up with empirical evidence, and that if he cannot, never to make such statements. And unfortunately, he's one of us, he's a lawyer. We issued a statement and we drew his attention to the fact that many men and women who make the investigation and prosecution of the cases by EFCC worthwhile are lawyers. Is he also suggested that those lawyers are aiding money laundering and financing of terrorism? It is common in Nigeria for people to make hasty generalization. And yet, very few lawyers, to my knowledge, have been prosecuted by the EFCC for aiding money laundering. We are proud members of the legal profession, and we draw a line in performing our professional duties and in aiding the commission of crime. We don't do that. There may be a few bad eggs, but that does not represent the picture or the majority of lawyers who toil to build up a reputation of integrity, a reputation of professionalism, and an EFCC chairman should not, for whatever reason, soil that image by portraying all of us, me and you, as aiders of money laundering.
All right, welcome back. Well, yes, he's right here with us, Afa Musigwe, the president of Nigerian Bar Association. Good morning, and thank you for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
First time we're hosting you as president. Congratulations to you having emerged. So we know that it's something that has been in the works for a while, you know, lots of background work. But incidentally, your vision in your manifesto, you were speaking about you wanted to run an inclusive bar that identifies problems, anticipates challenges, and delivers solutions and benefits to all lawyers. It looks as if you identify one problem right there with that particular scenario. But before we come to that, so having emerged and you've been going about with your several responsibilities, how are you coming through with all of them so far?
Well, Rome, as they say, was not built in a day. And I indicated in my campaign, in the course of the campaign, that some of the problems we identified or challenges will not be solved in a problem. They're part of institution building. And because a number of them will require collaboration with the heads of court, with the National Judicial Council, and working with the State Judicial Services Committee. So it's just about identifying them and prioritizing them as things that need to be done. I mean, one of such things is about our courts deploying technology to ensure that the hearing of cases in our courts go on smoothly, that the filing of cases, service of processes. And so, in these days of insecurity, high cost of traveling and all that, and I believe that if we deploy technology, you don't need to travel from Lagos to come to Abuja to file process at the Court of Appeal or Supreme Court or Federal High Court, or you need any court for that matter. That if the legal mail project, which the NJC has been driving for some years, comes on stream and all courts key into it, you can, from the comfort of your office or home even, file a process in a court in any part of Nigeria. And if a bailiff needs to serve you a hearing notice, they will serve you. And if a court would not sit, you would be notified. And a number of things would be easy and seamless. And it would also be very easy to retrieve processes filed or to access them from any location in the world, because they will be available online, saved in the cloud, and so you can't through any device access them. And I believe that this is the way to go in this age and time. And a judge can have virtual hearings and do so many things without people really having to travel all the times. I mean, imagine traveling from Maiduguri to the Supreme Court just to hear for a motion for enlargement of time for the filing of a process to be done. And I believe the Supreme Court can take this virtually. There's a whole lot of things we can do. And we talked about also ensuring that processes filed in court are in an electronically retrievable manner. So if you go to some of our courts, they have a problem of space. You see files sometimes piled up in corridors, and sometimes some of these documents are destroyed. And these are some of the things we talk about to make life easier. And it will be easy also for the courts when they deliver judgments, for these judgments to be available real time on the portals of these courts. So sometimes groundbreaking judgments are delivered in the UK, for example, or in America. And we have those documents immediately. So they are partnered with private companies that are able to, a public government body that certifies the judgment immediately. They are delivered and they are really available. And we can do this. The Corporate Affairs Commission has also shown that public documents can be available on the site of a government agency. So upon payment of a fee, if you want to get an extract of a company now, you go to the Corporate Affairs Commission portal. And then you put the relevant details and pay the fees, and it will be emailed to you. And we think our courts can work this way. You don't need to wait for a whole week or weeks for you to get judgment delivered by a court. And it has given rise to situations where sometimes people will argue that there are different versions of a certified true copy of a judgment, or people will speculate about what the court decided because they are waiting for the judgment delivered by the court, and they are relying on what journalists say. And sometimes some of these journalists are not in agreement as to what the court really decided. Or we don't have the benefit of the reasoning behind the conclusion, the reasoning behind the court's conclusions. And so sometimes too, this leads to so many speculations, misinterpretation and misrepresentation of court judgments. And they have in no small measure helped in doing damage to the judiciary, because people say different things and draw their own conclusions and sometimes impute ill motive to the court.
These are very interesting changes and reforms when they do come on stream, because, I mean, for instance now, you know, just like I think we have with security, even with media, the judiciary, if a judge delivers a particular judgment, maybe a political one, and people feel, no, it should not have gone this way, then we'll begin to, of course, judiciary will be bashed. So all kinds of narratives will come through, rightly or wrongly. And then sometimes too, as you highlighted, people could travel to a particular location for a judgment or even for a hearing or a proceeding in the court. And the prosecution can call the judge and say, I'm sorry, I can't be available today, despite people have traveled and done all of that. And then they are adjourned. And that happens lately.
You spent money, you've traveled, you've gone, you're waiting in the court, and somebody comes and says, oh, well, we are sorry, my lord will not be sitting today. Or if it's an appellate court, they say, oh, we are sorry, the court could not form a quorum. If in the previous day this information is available, even days, you will be notified. You receive an email, you receive a phone call.
So at this changes
National Industrial Court have pioneered it. Some individual judges are doing it.
So it's not supposed to be.
It should be an institutional thing. It should be a way of doing things. I mean, in some cases, you may not be able to guard against it. For example, a judge sat yesterday, was prepared to continue sitting the next day, and suddenly takes ill on the morning. That can be, it's understandable. But where it happens all the time, and there's no systemic way of ensuring that there's proper public communication as to whether the court will sit or what would happen, so it can be very annoying and very disruptive.
What's your targets now to achieve these objectives?
Now, like I said, I'm talking about the NBA engaging with the heads of courts and the NJC.
Okay.
We can't do this alone. The Chief Justice of Nigeria, as the chairman of the National Judicial Council, has a lot of role to play in this. The bar will engage with them. And for example, we're doing some engagement at the moment with respect to liberty of citizens. So there are provisions in the Police Act and the of Criminal Justice Act that require that chief magistrates visit detention facilities, and judges of the state high courts and federal high court visit detention facilities like the one by the SSS or DSS, as we like to call them now, and NDL, or the law enforcement agencies, to look at their detention facilities, to find out how long people have been held there, to grant bail to some persons, or give an order that the person be charged to court. That is observed more in the breach. So there's real force to cooperate with the chief judges, for example, to give directive and follow through to ensure that the magistrates, where these holding facilities or detention facilities are located, perform these statutory duties of visiting them and carrying out their functions. So this requires multi-sectoral collaboration for them to work.
I want to be able to talk about the reputation of lawyers, because that is this event happened in Abuja, by the way, where the EFCC boss actually said, and I want to be able to quote him. It was at the annual Criminal Law Review Conference right here in Abuja. So let's hear him. I want to be able to quote him word for word. The most traumatic discovery of the EFCC in recent years was that the subjugation of national interest and well-being to personnel interest by lawyers who aided briefcase foreign investors to fleece the nation in dubious transactions. The PNID scam, the Mambila Power Project, and some rights issues are cases in point. And he goes on to say that no mega financial fraud can be perfected without the input of lawyers. I heard you responding to that, saying if he has proof, he should, meet you in court, to have that. But I want to be able to talk about the reputation of lawyers, because he said this, and as much as you may take issue with some of the things that he said, the actual reputation of lawyers is being brought into question. It's a conversation that has been going on for quite a while. How are these crimes that we see in court, all these people that we see having to face justice at some point, how were they able to perpetrate these crimes without the input of lawyers? Is that something, apart from how you feel about how he said, is that something that the NBA thinks about?
So, I'll be the first to admit that some of our colleagues do not always do the right thing. But I would not agree to a situation where the impression is given that lawyers generate crimes. Just the same way I would not say because buildings collapse and kill people, all engineers are very bad people. Or because a few doctors perform abortion procedures unlawfully, that all doctors are murderers. That would be wrong. My response to the EFCC chairman is to the extent that such statements should be made with some level of circumspection so as to avoid creating the impression that every one of us out there is a criminal. He is one of us, and we're very proud of the work he's doing as chairman of the EFCC. And it would be wrong for me to suggest that because he's doing that work, and maybe a few EFCC operatives, officers, are doing what the law says they should not do, that he too acts in an untoward manner, or that he's a criminal, or he encourages corruption or commission of crime. That would be very wrong. The point we are making is that such statements should be made in context so as not to tear every lawyer and portray them as criminals. I know we are doing a lot of work with him and the NFIU on issues of tackling money laundering and involvement of lawyers in them, financing of terrorism. And all of us are doing that also to ensure that Nigeria is removed from the grey list of the Financial Action Task Force. So, and I had a conversation with him after saying, well, he was taken out of context, and we've left it at that. We have no personal fight with him, but we're only asking for caution, because many people internationally will rate Nigerian lawyers based on what such higher-ranking public officials say, and we're only saying it will not be good. And that the boast of the EFCC about the achievements in fighting corruption and financial crimes, or financial crimes and economic crimes, can largely be attributable to the work being done by the lawyers who have gone to court to prosecute these offenses of alleged offenders, and who have advised the operatives who investigate as to what to look for to meet the legal elements required to secure prosecution or to build up a watertight case, would it also, if such a generalization is allowed, would it also not suggest that they too may, in their own little way, also be encouraging that? So I think the important message to get is that while we may admit that there may be some bad eggs within every profession, that in trying to identify the role they play to encouraging such criminal activities to happen, that care must be taken so as not to portray every person as being like them. Of course, people, even in tax practitioners, invite people to advise them on how to look at the law and find ways legally permissible as to avoid some tax obligations. It may not necessarily mean that they've committed a crime, but they have just found some loophole in the law. States may not like the fact that people are utilizing loopholes in laws not to pay as much tax as they should be. But in some cases, these are legitimate and lawful. The point we are making, yes, there may be lawyers who have been involved. There may be lawyers who have crossed the line in providing legal services. And the NBA will not protect such lawyers or speak up for them where they are found wanting. That is why there's also room for lawyers who have abused the practice of their profession by joining in the commission of the crime, in which case they no longer act in their capacity as lawyers, but have become active participants in the commission of the crime. They can be prosecuted, and if there are such persons, prosecute them, shows evidence.
Does that not raise questions about the legal and disciplining lawyers, that committee? Because there are questions as to, is that really as efficient, and do the public see it as efficient as the lawyers think it is?
Well, I actually don't also think that our disciplinary process is efficient. I think it's one of the issues also we intend to tackle. At the moment, the process of disciplining lawyers is rather slow, and that is attributable to the state of the law. We have what they call the Legal Practitioners Disciplinary Committee, which only sits in Abuja. So which means that if a lawyer practicing in my hometown in Anambra State is accused of having committed a professional misconduct, and the complainant is also there in Nnewi, they would all have to come and is charged brought before the LPDC, as the acronym for it. He has to spend money to travel from Nnewi to Abuja. Likewise, the lawyer has responded for that matter to be heard. And because of the number of cases they have to hear, they can't finish this matter, so they may have to adjourn, and it is slow. And then the lawyer, if he is found culpable, has a right of appeal to the Supreme Court. And we think that there is need to decentralize the hearing of these disciplinary processes such that the committee can sit either in the states or in the regions. And so also to look at ways of making this process move fast so that disciplinary matters can be dealt with. Because if we don't show an ability to discipline our errant members, the public will not have confidence in us. If we don't show a willingness and an ability to weed out those who give a bad name to the profession, who put their professional position to the wrong use, to call them to order and punish them. People who trust us as legal practitioners and come to us, confide in us, give us their services and pay for our services, and who in process suffer on account of our abusing our privileged position, will not have confidence, will not trust lawyers. So that disciplinary process must be seen to work. And I will agree with you that it's not working as efficiently and as effectively as it should be expected to work.
Do you think that change will happen before your tenure is up?
Where conversations are on, the body of benchers is already on it, and everybody agrees. It is the Office of the Attorney General in trying to pioneer, to aggregate views on what should be put in a draft legal practitioners amendment bill presented to Federal Executive Council for approval, to be presented to National Assembly as an executive bill, is one of the priorities, one of the things being prioritized. And if we get to that stage and that draft document becomes a bill and National Assembly passes it, it is my hope or belief that it would help to speed up the process.
If I was Chamberlain's lawyer, I don't want to use you, but if I was his lawyer and he needed to circumvent something, didn't want to pay taxes, he's going to punch me after this show. So if he wanted to commit a crime and I'm his lawyer, and he came and met me and said, look, how do I get this done? And then I tell him, these are the loopholes. This is how you do it, sir. You know, and I do all of that. And he does it and gets away with it. Have I committed a crime as a lawyer?
Sure you have. If a client has evinced an intention to commit a crime, and comes to you and you give him advice that aids him, you cancel him, you become a party to a crime.
Because
under the law, any person who cancels, aids, participates in the commission of a crime is a party to an offense. It doesn't matter that you didn't join in committing it. But if the client has committed a crime and is being investigated and he confides in you, you haven't committed a crime by hearing that. It's not your duty to go and tell the law enforcement agencies. Point I'm making here is that it is not the duty of a lawyer to tell a client on what he should do so as to make the commission of a crime seemingly safe so that he can be caught.
But that's different from...
So we are not to aid the commission of a crime.
But if he commits the crime and tells me...
In fact, you have a duty if a client has confided in you about the possibility, the plan to commit a crime. Some people will strongly argue that you have a duty to report that because it's no longer a privileged conversation.
But if it's a crime, it's clearly spelled out. But if it's a lawyer advising a client about the lacunas of the law, that's
no, if it's about lacunas in the law, say, well, different. If you do this, you won't have committed an offense. But if you do this, it will be an offense. Because actually, that's what we're supposed to do. If you don't do this, you will be guilty of an offense. Or it's an infraction. You may open up yourself to a criminal investigation or to liabilities or penalties. So you give advisory services. But if the client says, look, I want to go and kill this person, tell me how I can kill him
and get away with it.
That's no longer your duty. If you give such advice, knowing the person intends to put it to use, you're no longer acting as a lawyer. You're acting as a party to a plan to murder another person.
But you must have heard about when the public keeps saying, I mean, the lawyers have talked about judicial reforms for life forever, you know, and then the public also wants to see improved judiciary such that all of this complaints about judge or lawyers doing this and that becomes history. So in terms of judicial reforms, do you think that at the end of the day, some of those reforms perhaps may address a lot of the perception, the wrong perception the public has about judges and delivering justice, at least in the first instance?
So I'll say this to you. It's not a one-way traffic. You can have all the reforms you want, copy the best system that has worked elsewhere, and the perception will still not go away if the perception is negative. It's also about those who administer this process and the system, how they do it, how do people perceive their decisions as being just. You can have a process that says, oh, all trials can end within 1 week, and the trials end in 5 days. So while you have achieved the speed that people expect from you, if people don't feel satisfied that the decisions you render are founded in law and fact, the fact that you have reformed with respect to time, speed, will not improve the negative image you suffer from. So it's about giving even-handed justice, as we say it in the legal profession, about appointing the right caliber of persons to be judicial officers, and about their reasoning being consistent. So part of the perception is that sometimes judgments of courts are contradictory and inconsistent, and that even lawyers complain that sometimes we are not able to advise our clients with certainty. So when you talk about perception, there's a whole gamut of things that need to be done beside the reforms, because you can get the best law that has worked elsewhere, elevated a country maybe from a third world to a first world, and have a first-class perception about the ability to do things, and then you don't get other aspects of it right. Then you have a problem.
I'm sorry, what do you mean that if you can advise clients? Because we see this a lot with political cases. You know, but it could be a state, it could be whatever it is, and then they go to court, this court gives this judgment, they go to a court of coordinate jurisdiction gives a counter judgment. Sometimes here INEC says, look, we're confused, which one do we, okay, now which one came first?
So your question just made my point. Also, if on an issue, if on an issue, for example, that the Court of Appeal is the last court of it, and I can get a judgment from, let's say, a division that says it is white. Another division says, oh, it is blue. Another division says, oh, it's actually a rainbow. Another one says, it's actually none of these. It's actually the clouds. And it happens more in political cases. And it has impacted much more negatively on the perception of the judiciary. And I hope I will live to see that day when our courts are less involved in political matters, especially issues relating to choice of candidates. And I hope I'll live to see that day maybe soon, where the issue of who is the party's candidate is not justiciable, so that the parties go sort themselves out. On such a day that the party's process of selecting candidates will be very, very transparent, such that people will be able to live with whoever, or the party can decide, you know what, yes, you may appear to be more popular, but we don't think this most popular candidate represents our ideals and views as to who should represent us or stand for election. This person that may not appear to be the most popular is our candidate, and the court should not question them. It should be an internal affairs of the party, more like going back to the pre-1979 situation where the courts refrain from being sucked into them, because it is the political cases and the desperation of politicians to win at all costs. And also we have a role to play in it. We lawyers, ordinarily by teaching as a first-year law student, second-year law student, you're supposed to put before the court cases that are favorable to you and draw the court's attention to the ones that are not favorable to you. So sometimes these judges are human beings, sometimes in a rush, sometimes they may not advert their mind toward the decisions in the case, and sometimes one division may not know that another division has given a judgment on that matter.
But I thought that should be history.
Well, you may think it's that common and very easy. Yes, it should be, but it is what it is at the moment. But what we crave for the certainty and how we're going to achieve it, I do not know. I cannot tell you sitting down here at the moment. But we lawyers and litigants and the public wants to know that some certainty that if this is an issue, the court will likely decide it this way. Or even if we have no clear idea as to how we expect the court to decide it, but that when the court decides it, we should be able to read it and say, oh yes, we trust the court because this reasoning is sound and we don't think anything untoward happened in the delivery of judgment. Because when judgments start becoming look bizarre, when people go away scratching their head, oh, did the court really say this? That's when you have a problem. Or when you say, but the court, they said that in the other court the other day. And they said that, I'm told there's a Supreme Court decision that said this. How come this the Court of Appeal decided something different from what the Supreme Court has said? This is why we have a problem. And I'm sure the Chief Justice of Nigeria in maiden address at the legal year hinted at some of this. But there's things we all need to do, because we as lawyers don't want people looking at us as criminals or being parties to subordinate justice or being people that you cannot trust, that whatever you tell us to say, we'll keep saying. In certain crimes, if a lawyer argues a position that is inconsistent with earlier decisions of courts, it could be an issue of professional misconduct. But I'm not aware in Nigeria that we strongly think so. But we should, because a lawyer should not deliberately argue a position that does not represent the law or mislead the court into accepting as the correct position of the law, a position that is inconsistent with decided authorities.
If you're looking at
because the decisions of the court will be trusted if they are consistent, and people can say, look, sure, this is what it's going to be because the court has said so. In England, there's still cycles of over 100 years ago and 200 years ago. And if for any reason the courts have to depart from it, there have to be a reason discourse. But part of the problem we have this also is that sometimes this courts depart from earlier decisions without expressly overruling the earlier one or saying why they are not following this one, even when they have been cited to them. They just give a new decision. And now we have that interesting theory in Nigeria that, well, if there are two inconsistent decisions by the same court, you take the most recent one.
Yes.
It doesn't matter whether the most recent one was not as well decided and reasoned as the earlier one. But you say, well, since this one is later in time, you follow it.
Yeah, speaking of the code of conduct for the behavior of lawyers, one recent trend that we've started seeing is lawyers on social media. You know, speaking up very, very vehemently about cases that they're handling, getting into squabbles even on social media. Is there, I don't know if it's wrong or if it's right, but maybe you can educate us. Are there codes of conduct for how lawyers present themselves on social media?
Well, I didn't want to let the cat out of the bag, but we are working on developing a social media policy for lawyers and maybe getting the body we call the General Council of the Bar to look at it and possible consideration for inclusion in our rules of professional conduct. But it is unethical for any lawyer, whether you're directly involved in a case or not, to discuss a case that is ongoing in court, what we call sub judice. Lawyers are not supposed to comment on matters in a way that may likely affect the administration of justice. And it is worse when senior lawyers, including senior advocates, in their full robes, finish a hearing, come out of the court and they are granted an interview. And we intend to, going forward, take steps against any senior lawyer, or any lawyer for that matter, who grants an interview with any respect to a case pending in court. I will personally sign a petition against such a lawyer. And then that's
going to affect us, Chamberlain.
I said this
we
to
sort
you.
of wait until they come out.
I said this to you, except in some countries, maybe America, where people can speak about ongoing cases. In the UK, where we borrowed our legal system from, you can't go to ask a lawyer questions about what transpired in court. That is why you're a journalist in court. You report on what you have seen, and you're not supposed to start running commentaries on them. When a judgment is rendered, you can discuss the judgment.
Okay.
But you can't be discussing the risk and giving opinion as to what could have been or what didn't happen.
Yeah, so
that's totally wrong.
That will not affect us because we have creative ways of doing.
Well, we don't have any. We are not regulating you, but we are going to talking about lawyers who are involved in cases and who go on to discuss them.
Yeah,
this is our profession. It makes us look no different from some other professions that are not as noble as ours.
Speaking about senior lawyers, you know, I know you must have also read in the time where judges based senior lawyers and say, how can you, all sorts of things.
I mean, you waste the time of the court.
Coming before
why would
the
you
court,
bring this frivolous
matters that you know as a junior lawyer that this should not be the case. How did you? So those things, we read them and public they're stunned as to what's going on here, and there's only one suspicion. Well, if they've been given a lot of money to go back and for that case. In fact, some even argue saying, listen, I want to go back to the Supreme Court to reinterpret their judgments. Those kind of things happen.
It's not to my knowledge that courts interpret their judgments. If a judgment is delivered, you don't need to go for interpretation. But my point is this, and I made that in a meeting that took place under the auspices of the Chief Justice of Nigeria sometime last week. And I said, our courts should go further. Where a lawyer has brought, to refer a lawyer to this right committee, where a lawyer knows, for example, that the last court to entertain an appeal in a matter, for example, is the Court of Appeal, and you file that appeal in the Supreme Court, the court should go beyond imposing costs to be paid personally by the lawyer to refer that lawyer to disciplinary action or exercise the disciplinary powers of the Supreme Court to discipline the person. People get away with so many things in Nigeria because actions don't have consequences. If an issue of law is so settled that there's nothing further can be said from the facts can only lead to one conclusion, and the lawyer still appeals on that issue, either because he needs a case to be a senior advocate of Nigeria or because he has been so much paid that he shuts his eyes to decades-long or years-long authorities on that matter, and he has nothing new to urge the court. If we don't take actions, the too many appeals we have in our court will not stop, and our lawyers will not continue to, as Justice Moise said in a case, continue to, they will never cease to test the consistency of the courts. Because courts must be taken to be consistent. And if they have consistently held a position, and there's nothing new to be urged, a counsel should be able to do well to advise his or her client that, look, based on this authority, I'm sorry, we can't go on appeal. And maybe, too, the provision for obtaining leave to appeal in our court should be strongly implemented so that you have to convince a court that there's an arguable issue for you to be allowed to appeal against that issue, for example, to the Supreme Court. But because most appeals, courts don't want that time wasted to hear application for leave and still have to, every appeal says that they want some for determining that. But we need to put stringent conditions to ensure that only cases that deserve it go. And I think I should use this opportunity to also say it. Many of the appeals in the Supreme Court are simply there because the process of appointing senior advocate is a quantitative process, not a qualitative process.
Oh, I see.
Why the rule says that the case you use must have contributed to
you getting.
It must have continued, someone must have done something novel.
Oh, see.
The verification assessment process does not actually go into finding out whether that your case has done anything. And it doesn't even matter whether in that case you were thoroughly lambasted for wasting the time of the court. You just said, I have one judgment, I have a second one, I have three, my cases are complete. Nobody cares to ask, what have you added to the body of knowledge? Of what use was this appeal? What has this appeal achieved in substance? Other than maybe wasting of court, time of the court.
Okay, I know we'll be winding down soon, but let me just ask you this. There was a recent scenario that played out for the Ondo governorship elections. I think was it a day before or 2 days before the time, between the Labour Party's case. So eventually there was a judgment that came from court, I think a day or two before the elections, that I can't remember what's the name of the other candidates.
But who was the rightful candidate of the Labour Party?
Yeah. So in that particular matter, so is it that the courts are usually, don't they avert themselves to, this election is coming up on a particular date, and there are several processes and things that politicians need to do to prepare for those elections. So why deliver judgment a day or two before elections? Because politicians can use that as a leverage to knock off and weaken that political party and make sure that whoever wants to win disables their opponent. What's going to be done?
No, I agree with you that sometimes politicians can cleverly try to put a party on its wrong feet by contesting who was the candidate. And sometimes even a political party can also try to use it to get votes in support of two different candidates. But my point is that the judicialization of a party electoral process as to who represents a political party should be given a second look. We should consider whether it is still necessary for that matter to be justiciable. It has brought a bad name on our court. It has put a lot of work on our court. And I think it's time we did away with that. With time, we'll give political parties the autonomy to choose their candidates. Whoever they choose, whether people are accepted and like that or not, should be allowed to run.
But it has to be
while one may argue that it may bring about a lack of internal democracy in political parties. But my counter argument would be that it also give people an opportunity. If this party is not democratic, they may go to the one that is democratic. But our court should not be burdened with the issue of determining for political parties who should be the candidate they should put forward in an election.
What if we then say, look, if that matter has to be the case anyway, there has to be a time limit for it to be decided.
If it was not within time limit, the Court of Appeal would not have given that judgment a few days to the election. So I don't know the facts and the timeline, and there to be remit for me to be commenting on it. Yeah, and that takes me still back to the extent that it affects the choice of the people as to who they vote for in an election. The court should not be involved. No, but I don't want to conjecture or go into the facts of the particulars by going into the facts of Ondo election, but to the extent that who a political party is fielding could be subject of judicial adjudicatory process and occupy the court up to the eve of the election should not be encouraged. And
so what, should we go to a tribunal?
The court should be insulated from it. Whoever the party presents their name forward should be their candidate.
When you say court, does it include tribunals?
Well, court or other tribunal. So, if you like the third administratively, where the court or other tribunal was used in the constitution, who said that the court is a type of tribunal. It doesn't matter what name you call it. My point is, it should not be subject of judicial review. No court should determine for a political party.
But that can lead to impunity within political parties.
Then the voters have a right to say, because you, political party, you're full of impunity, we reject you.
But maybe that should have been sorted out at a particular time before the election.
In 1979, political parties chose their candidates. And I didn't hear so much cry about impunity. Let them choose. That's why they're political parties.
It's a different country now.
See, like I gave the example, you may be most popular. But a political party may feel that even though you're the most popular, you do not stand for what they believe they stand for. They mustn't field you. Let it be their internal decision. And if they keep abusing it, things will evolve over time. And the parties that respect the will of the people may get more support, may get more politicians going there. But the courts have been put in a very bad light because of their involvement in determining candidates for political parties.
I mean, if you could pick a time when these kinds of adjudication should be done before the
constitution has already the constitution has done that.
Yeah. So when is it supposed to be? Because the constitution says someone can come up 2 days to the election and do this and start the process.
I say this again. I do not know the full facts of the matter, and I wouldn't want to be sucked into it. But the constitution has said, for example, elections should have 150 days, and that's why I put some timelines. For example, saying before the trial court is 180 days to determine it. At the appeal, 60 days from the date of judgment, and the Court of Appeal, likewise Supreme Court. Why would the issue of the choice of a political matter go all the way to the Supreme Court? A Supreme Court of a country should be a policy court. Should be a court that interprets the Constitution and brings about certainty where there are conflicting decisions of lower courts, like the Court of Appeal. Should not be a court that will be determining facts, like who is candidate of a party. And that is why our court is overworked and overburdened, and the appeals keep coming in, and the politicians keep amending the Constitution to ensure that only their matters are determined within time. The commercial disputes, resolution of commercial disputes, which will give confidence to investors, especially foreign ones, to invest in Nigeria and believe that our judicial system will resolve any of their commercial disputes, are not working, and many businesses are being taken to foreign courts. It is not uncommon to see Nigerians sign an agreement and say that any dispute between them will be resolved by the Court of England or by an arbitral tribunal in London, Paris, or some other place. Imagine how much we are losing. Imagine how much we are suggesting that our judicial system cannot be trusted to resolve disputes, that only the foreign ones can give you credible results. Think about that.
Yeah, so on that food for thoughts, we'll get your thoughts on that one. Unfortunately, we can't go to the point where we can ask, look, do you see a future in this country where judiciary can sack a president who perhaps the laws didn't agree with them?
I do.
In this country?
If it is within their powers to do so, I do. I see someday judiciary being able to do that. Thinking they will not do that will mean that I believe that the judiciary is politically induced to give decisions to preserve whoever is in power, and I don't think so.
All right, Mr. Afomosigwe is the president of Nigerian Bar Association, also senior advocate of Nigeria. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you for inviting me.
All right, Business Morning comes up now.
Well, hello and welcome to Business Morning. Well, we see the trading month of November is winding down, and the month-to-date performance of the all-share index, that's down about 0.4%. So I guess it's not a November to remember at this time. But let's get to the top stories that set your agenda now. Starting with the FX market, we see the NAFEX rate as a spot market that depreciated by about 13 kobo. So the marginal decline there, that's for the NAFEX window, 1,689 naira. That was the close to the dollar yesterday. For NFEM, 1,660 naira. So it's still that trading band there, down about 0.08%. So marginal losses. That's for yesterday at the close of trade in the FX market, and it's still the trade after the MPC decision. That was the last one for 2024. Then, you know, most times we expect some kind of strengthening for the domestic currency, but there's still volatility right there. But we hear the central bank governor there saying that the naira has been stable since June. Let's get a check on the oil market now. One of our major FX revenue drivers there, $72.69 per barrel. That's for Brent. Weakness again, down 0.2% in early trade today, and we'll see for the US WTI crude, that also dipped in early trade today, 0.2%, $68.58 a barrel. That's so it's still the same issues there impacting the oil market. We'll drill down on what's driving sentiment and if we can see some kind of strengthening for the prices, and maybe the bulls can come back into the oil market. All right, to other stories now. I would see the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, that's the NUPRC, they said they've exceeded its 2024 revenue targets by 49%, despite global challenges in the oil industry. This achievement was revealed during a public session reviewing Nigeria's medium-term fiscal framework. The NUPRC attributes the revenue boost to regulatory reforms, efforts to eliminate inefficiencies and attract investment even amid global divestment from oil and gas assets. The NUPRC's chief executive, Agbenga Komolafe, expresses optimism about continued growth, citing initiatives like the 1 million barrels per day project and the drill or drop policy as key factors driving success. And now for the budgets. Now, the Enugu State Governor, Peter Mbah, has unveiled the 2025 appropriation bill, totaling 971 billion naira to the State House of Assembly. The budget, titled Budget of Exponential Growth and Inclusive Prosperity, aims to accelerate development across the state. The budget allocates 133 billion naira to recurrent expenditure, while 837 billion naira is earmarked for capital projects nearly double the 414 billion naira in the 2024 revised budget. Take a listen.
We're proposing to the House of Assembly today a budget with a total envelope of 971 billion 84 million. As against the budget for 2024 fiscal year, which totaled 521 billion 556 million 386,000. This represents an 86.4% increase from the 2024 reordered budget.
All right, now let's get a check on what's playing out in the commodities market. And top on the agenda is still the Port Harcourt Refinery and other matters in the market. Joining us now is Mr. Bismarck Ruwani, MD, CEO, Financial Derivatives Company, joining me via Zoom. Great to have you on the show, sir.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
All right, so we've seen all marketers, they've set conditions for using the newly renovated Port Harcourt Refinery, demanding that it sells refined petroleum products at prices lower than those of the Dangote Petroleum Refinery. How are you seeing this?
First and foremost, let us get one thing very clear. One is that the total market, the total size of the industry, is a figure, but that the Port Harcourt Refinery, the old Port Harcourt Refinery for that matter, is producing only 60,000 barrels. 60,000 barrels is nothing. It's less than 5% of total supply in this market. Dangote's refinery has a 685,000 barrels capacity, and this particular refinery has 6,000. So they are price followers. They cannot be price leaders in this industry. Two, they are producing in Port Harcourt, and the product has been lifted to other parts of the country. So
sorry, who's handling the switching of cameras?
So that is what is happening now. So as far as I'm concerned, the price leader and the dominant player is the Dangote Refinery. Dangote Refinery has announced 970, and the Port Harcourt Refinery is actually selling at 1,045, 75 naira above that. So, number one, clearly, the price leader is Dangote Refinery. The price follower is Port Harcourt Refinery. And then the other modular refineries are also going to be following suit. Now, Dangote has brought down its price for now as a year-end gesture. And the price of crude globally has actually come down to about $72. So what goes into it is the cost of production, the global price of crude, and generally speaking, it is said, according to the NMPC, that the total demand in Nigeria is about 49 million liters a day. Dangote says that it's about 30 million liters. So there's a 19 million liters difference between what NMPC says is the total demand and what Dangote says is the total demand. No matter what happens, I think that it is clear that there will be no queues, and also the quality. The question of quality is another issue. I think that Dangote they have laboratories to test the quality of what they have, and NMPC also claims that their quality is of the highest standards. But generally speaking, the Nigerian consumer benefits when there's a price war, and the distributors also benefit from this. What we have noticed, though, is that the retailers have not reflected the new price of the Dangote Refinery yet. So we are still seeing everybody selling at about 10.50, 10.80, 10.30. We need to see those prices come down below 1,000 naira a liter. And then it begins to play in to the transportation logistics cost, and then begins to have an effect on inflation. But right now, at least we are not seeing the price increase, At least we know there are no queues. At least we do know that the quality so far has been good, and we've had no stories about that. So generally speaking, I think it's a good development for the refinery to come on stream. But like they say, the sweetness of the pudding is in eating. Let us see how long they can stay afloat. And what is the extraction value for every 100, or for every liter, or every barrel of oil? What do they get out of it? Because if you are getting less efficient output, then it won't take long before those refineries will go into financial difficulty.
All right, so, definitely seeing what's playing out, with the refinery so far, do you think, at some point we'll see some kind of price war, with the refineries? And how do you think this matter would, conclude at some point? And do we expect at least, competitive prices for PMS?
I think that, yes, there'll be a price war, but in a price war, the man who has control, the man who has the largest supply is the one that can come out. And in a price war, if the government, for that matter, should not be involved in a price war, what you do is to ensure that the prices are not, there's a consumer protection agency, which will ensure that the prices you're not gouging customers. And you can see that already, even in different retail outlets. You go to MRS, you see a price here. You go to Mobile, you see a price there. You go to Cornwall, you see another price there. So, but that's efficient. Price competition is good for the consumer, right? And I think that for the first time, for the first Christmas in many years, there will be no queues. There will be no, there will be availability across all parts of the country, and that you can see that the pressure is on the suppliers. The NNPC refinery, the modular refineries, the Dangote refinery, to ensure that the consumers are happy and that they have quality and they have a good price. If not, people can get it from anywhere else. And if people can import, the independent marketers are threatening to import, so bring it down, to bring down the prices. So this enables us to have an efficient industry. But remember that the refining business is high volume, low margin. The margins are very thin, and the financing cost is pretty high. So I think that competition is good, but with cannibalistic competition, where competitors kill themselves, all right, is not good, because in the end, everybody suffers. So I think a fair price is what is required, and that fair price today is roughly at about where the Dangote refinery is saying 970. I won't be surprised to see prices come down a bit lower when the price of oil begins to fall to $70 a barrel.
All right, definitely from what you've said, so far, it seems we might not have that regular Christmas period fuel queues. We know we've had that trend for the longest time, but I'm going to be watching out for this Yuletide season. But before we get into other matters now, we're seeing oil prices. Brent seems to be looking towards sub $70. How are you seeing the market play out?
I think that, generally speaking, because of the truce in Lebanon and the escalation of crisis between Ukraine and Russia, I think that you are going to be seeing prices come down to about $70. But below $70, even the shale producers in America and the fracking producers begin to have difficulty. So it will be good to see it at $65 a barrel, which is where it is. But remember that our budget was based on an assumption of $75 a barrel. Right now, you're having a spot price at least $3 or $4 below our benchmark price. And our benchmark price is the price at which, after higher than that, we begin to accrue to excess crude account and savings. So it actually puts our budget in a very bad light at this time. I suspect that when the budget is presented by the president when he comes back from Paris, we are going to have to reduce that benchmark price to $70. And that means that our revenue targets become slightly, underwater. And it could mean a lot. So while on one hand, the price of petrol will reduce because of that, on the other hand, Nigerians' revenue aspirations and investments in the oil and gas sector will suffer. And that's a tough situation for Nigeria at this point in time, especially when we have all of these ambitious goals to make the economy get to $1 trillion in size by the year 2030.
Yeah, so let's look at the FX market. Now, we know on Tuesday, the Central Bank of Nigeria issued guidelines for interbank trading system, matching system, FMs, setting the minimum tradable amount at about $100,000. So how does this CBN's FM's initiative aim to, enhance transparency and efficiency, in the foreign exchange market?
Yes, Ladi, what I told Nigerians on Tuesday night on the network news, 10 o'clock news, was that the Nigerian naira has been misaligned from its fair value. There's what we call the fair value, we call it market value, and the official price. And one of the reasons for this is the market structure. So technically speaking, what actually happens is that you have an auction system and then you migrate into an efficient interbank system. What the central bank is doing, I suspect, is that one, they are selling money to the BDCs at the retail level. They are selling money to the banks through the system, through the normal system. Now they are introducing this matching system where banks can trade amongst themselves using the Bloomberg terminals. So you see exactly what price they are selling, what volume is being sold, and it brings about transparency and price discovery. That way, so you will see that the market, the industry, or the foreign exchange market is now transitioning to become a much more efficient market. Now, the difference between the market price, which is 1,740 now, the official price, which is 1,690, the difference is about 2-3%. And there's no incentive to arbitrage. And now when you have this matching system, and we now begin to see that the prices begin to come close together, airline prices, oil company prices, and all of that, and that it will squeeze out the people that actually come in illicit flows of money into the system. So I think it's welcome. It will not have an impact immediately, but essentially what we believe is that the naira begins to appreciate very slowly between now, December, January, and February. Then you begin to see some value accretion there. But we shouldn't be too excited that we are going to see the naira dollar rate at 1,200. No, the federal government in its budget used an assumption of 1,400, and I think that it will take a long time before it gets to. And my target is that it will be at about 1,550 to 1,580 by February next year. All things being equal, touch wood.
All right, all things being equal, we'll keep watching to see how they perform going into 2025. But thank you so much, Mr. Bismarck Rwani, MD, CEO, Financial Derivatives Company. It's great having you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so coming up after the break, we'll dive into the outlook for restaurant inflation in Nigeria. What factors are driving prices higher and how are businesses adapting? That's our next conversation. Just stay with us. Welcome back. Well, the National Bureau of Statistics third quarter GDP data highlights strong growth in the accommodation and food services sector as for Q3 2024, both nominally and in real terms compared to the same period in the previous year and the preceding quarter. However, its contribution to GDP, that's for nominal and real, showed mixed results, slightly decreasing compared to the third quarter of 2023, but improving from the second quarter of 2024. Well, joining me for this conversation now, we have Tosi Onofoye as a co-founder, CEO, Chow Central. And Chow Central, Y Combinator backed. This one is joining me right here in the studio. It's great to have you.
Thank you so much.
So I remember, at some point, not too far away, I remember when you would go to a restaurant, for some fine dining, maybe just the two of you. And you end up spending maybe 15,000 to about 30,000 naira for two people. There was a time like that, fine dining. It wasn't so long ago. But now we're seeing that get up to 90K or 100,000. So prices are going up, and we've seen food inflation that topped about 40% at some point, but came down back maybe about 38, and wound back up to about 39%. So talk to me about what's driving this restaurant inflation and how the businesses are navigating it so far.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Happy to be here. Speaking on inflation, right? So inflation is a big problem in Nigeria for every business, really. Particularly for those of us in the food space, inflation has been a pain in the ass, sort of, so just to say, right? And I think every restaurant sort of has to understand their target customer, and then follow on by streamlining their operations to suit their target customer, and still make a profit or build a sustainable business while doing that. So for us at Chow Central, right, what we have done is to provide affordable food to as many people as possible. And we have done that by streamlining our processes, right? Having long-term partnerships with our suppliers as well. And these are the things that we've seen have been very critical to tackle inflation in Nigeria. Yeah.
Right, and looking at most of these restaurants, and seeing that food inflation is also rising at this point, how are you seeing demand for fine dining, so far in 2024, and festivities that's upon us, at this time? Do you think Nigerians will be going out there to these fancy restaurants and having, nice, lunch and dinner?
So yes, right, we can say that disposable income is shrinking, right? So people have less disposable income to spend on frivolities, right? But there's still a large market. In Nigeria, for example, we have over 200 million people. So we expect that a lot of people have to eat. Food is a necessity, so people have to eat. Now, as concerning fine dining, right, there's a decrease in the amount of people that are opting for fine dining. But for us, we're positioned more for affordable dining, right? And we've seen that continue to grow. A lot more people are seeking convenience day by day. So we are seeing that as long as you are able to position yourself to serve customers in this new business climate environment, you'll be able to continue to grow as a business.
So when you're talking about affordable dining, I guess the Amala joints are still doing pretty well.
Yes, so the Amala joints, despite the fact that they had to increase their prices, they are still doing pretty well, exactly.
So we're seeing price rises, from fine dining all the way to affordable. And talking about, most of these Amala joints at this point, we're still seeing demand, still able to, cope with the price rises. They're not as astronomical as what we see with other segments, right?
Yeah, so by that you mean that we are still seeing demand even despite inflation, right? Yeah, so we're still seeing demand despite inflation, but that is because we've been able to we've been able to go back to the drawing board and innovate. So at 500 Chow, what we have done is to, for example, come up with meal combos that reduce the prices for customers, right? So you want to essentially eat jollof rice, plantain, and a piece of protein. We understand that for lunch, that is all you need, and we have done that in a way that is affordable for you when you need lunch. So at a time where you have, let's say, loose cash in your pocket and you want variety, you want high margin meals, you can also come to the platform and you'll be able to get high margin meals. So most restaurants are what we do, and I believe that's what most successful restaurants would do, is to have a menu that helps people when they need affordable meals, so they can get really affordable meals. And even at the time where they want to spend on other things, there's still other things on the menu to spend.
I'm talking about, some of these affordable menus. I've seen some of these brands, come up with the, Hungry Man package, where you maybe have one piece of egg and maybe jollof rice and a couple of other, condiments. But, looking at those kind of menus, they're trying to help the customer get something affordable. But how is that, playing into revenue for most of these companies? Is it affecting them negatively or is it positive?
So it's positive, right, on bottom line revenue, and it's also positive on growth because we understand the problem. It just shows that you have a clear understanding of what the problem is and how to best meet your customers at their point of need. So you need to create an affordable combination of meals to serve customers in this business climate. But you still need to do it in a way that you are building your business to be a sustainable long-term business. So it needs to make business sense for you. So despite the fact that we have combos together, it's all architected and orchestrated in a way that it makes sense for the business long term, and we are able to serve our customers' needs. Yeah.
Right, and going into this Yuletide season, it's another Christmas, and some have described this Christmas as coming at a really, really difficult time. Where we're seeing petrol prices at levels we've never, seen before. We're seeing food prices high, the price of a bag of rice, and all of that, high. So what are you seeing for this Yuletide spending?
So for the spending in particular, right? We already know that the climate, the macroeconomic climate is not so good at the moment in Nigeria. So we expect to not see as much as we usually used to see last year, for example, right? But we still believe that we're going to see trend in people spending. A lot of people have worked really hard this year, and they want to enjoy themselves by the end of the year. Speaking to what you earlier mentioned about the increase in fuel, like fuel hikes and things like that, right? Our business is best situated to sort of solve that problem, because we have a cloud kitchen model where we launch dark kitchens in strategic locations to help reduce delivery fees and make ourselves more accessible to customers easily. So it makes it cheaper. You don't have to move too far to get the food and things like that. So once again, it's really understanding the business climate and bringing out innovative solutions to solve it for the customers.
And looking at the food delivery business, we know even the dispatch riders are going through a lot, right now, and sometimes they pass on that aggression to the customer, sometimes not delivering the food on time, or, having issues, getting to the location, and you hear they don't have maybe this permit or Lagos State permit or Ogun State permit and all of that, so how you seen that food delivery segment?
Yeah, so it's a booming segment, right? As regarding demand, a lot of people are seeking convenience. We've seen the trend move from people seeking cravings, and when maybe on your birthday you go out to eat. Now people are going out to eat when it's just because it's more convenient, right? So convenience is on the rise. And on the side of rider behavior, we leverage technology for these things. So a lot of things are being properly tracked using technology. With the Riders app, the mobile app the rider uses, you're able to look at his GPS, you understand where he is at every point in time. And that incentivizes the rider to want to deliver the food on time despite how he feels, right? So we don't rely on how he feels, we rely more on our system and our processes. And that has really driven us to make sure we can give our customers.
It's quite interesting. I remember one experience I had with one rider, at some point. He was supposed to deliver food to me from a restaurant, but he didn't make it. He said his bike got impounded or something. Then he took that same food to go and return back to the restaurant the next day. Imagine my food staying overnight and going back to the restaurant, me losing money. So definitely that segment, there's a lot of reforms we need to see there, to make it smooth.
Yeah,
that's the whole process of getting food delivered and all that. But I also know you play in that industry where a lot of people, a lot of businesses, startups, we keep hearing of raises here and there. This startup has raised this amount and backed by this company. So talk to me about raising funds, at this time for business. Was 2024 easy, for raising money?
Well, so I would say that when it comes to raising capital, right, it really depends on the business you're building and your capacity, right? So for us, we've been building a long-term sustainable business, and raising capital has not been difficult for us because of what we're doing. And also looking at emerging trends, right, we are building a technology-enabled business. And in these times, technology is so important to, pushing your business and driving your business. So I think for us, because we've been able to put technology into our business and have it as a key driver for our growth, that has simplified fundraising for us. And yeah, I think that's an advice to every business owner. You need to incorporate technology into your business and use that to drive your business.
Right, and talking about incorporating technology, for your idea and all of that, what would you say is that sweet spot that investors are looking for, right now? If you're trying to raise capital and you're watching this show now, you have that fantastic idea, but you don't know how to raise the capital, what would you say is that sweet spot investors are looking for that would be a no-brainer? They would invest in your business or give you that capital.
Well, so as a builder myself, I wouldn't exactly know what an investor would want, but what I would say is, I wouldn't exactly know how they think, but what I would say is you need to really focus on building a business that can scale, and a business that the unit economics make a lot of sense. So you're scaling a positive unit economics business where you make money from every single transaction, and you don't have to be there for multiple or thousands of transactions to happen. So at 500 Chow now, we have multiple kitchens that we've set up. I'm here right now with you, right? And we have orders being delivered because we have processes, we have technology in place to ensure that these things can happen. And by the end of this year, we hope to open even 5 more kitchens. So it means that we have built our business in a scalable way. So if you want to easily build a business that investors will like, you need to build a positive unit economics business that is easy to scale or can scale.
Right. So it's not about your face or how you look. It's about what you're building at this point, and they'll pound there. They'll be like, take my money at this point. That's for the investors.
Well, so the thing is, yeah, because everybody has, like, if you have money in the bank,
right,
your money is best spent if you give it to somebody to make way more money for you, right, rather than just having it in the bank. So as long as they're able to see that this person is trustworthy,
yes,
this person is going to deliver on what they've promised, I think
and bankable. Thank you so much. It was great having you, Tosi Nofue, co-founder, CEO at Chow Central. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Have a good day.
All right, so there you have it. That's show today. Markets are open right now, and we see the last trading week of November. That is coming to an end, but we'll get a sense of what to expect for the Santa rally. Is it going to happen? Thank you so much for watching. I'm Ladi Williams. I hand things over to the Sunrise Daily team.
All right, welcome back. Yes, indeed, we're turning our attention to the tax bills before the National Assembly. As you've seen there, we've got Honorable Philip Agbesa here with us. He is the Deputy Chairman, House Committee on Information. Good morning. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you so much.
So talk to us about this. We've got 4 bills before the House. We know that in the Senate yesterday, it was rancorous, boisterous, if you will. Rare. You don't see the Senate in this kind of mood all the time. So perhaps a lot of you might have seen that report where Senators Ningi and Senator Dume were kicking against it, but the Deputy Senate President too was presiding on the day, overruled them, and then the FIRS boss and Mr. Taiwo Ijele and his team came into the chamber and addressed the Senate on the matter. Well, let me say, briefed the Senate to shed a lot more light on that tax bill. So that's part of what we're going to talk about today. But look at this slide now. You will see these bills before the Assembly. So Honorable will talk us through some of them now. We have the Nigeria Tax Bill 2024, the Nigeria Tax Administration Bill. We'll have the Nigeria Revenue Service Establishment Bill, and we also have the Joint Revenue Board Establishment Bill. All of them before the National Assembly, and they will be discussing these matters. And Honorable, well, first of all, these bills, you're going to debate them today, and chances are that they might be passed today. Is it?
Well, thank you very much once again. The general principle of the bill, of the bills before the Parliament, is that we want to have a revenue system that works for the citizens of this great nation. We want a revenue system that is able to address, deficiencies like the issue of equity and fairness. And we also want a revenue system that is able to address the issue of multiple taxation, where citizens over the years have been made, to pay taxes over and over and over and over again and again. So the mood of the Parliament, to a large extent, has changed from the rancorous one that we had during the first reading of the bill to a better atmosphere.
It was rancorous yesterday in the Senate.
Yes, because the Senate is just doing what the House of Representatives has done 2 weeks back. What did we do? In the wisdom of His Excellency, the Right Honorable Speaker, Right Honorable Tajuddin Abbas, we invited the key drivers of the bills in the executive, and when they came before us, we also, brought in our in-house tax experts, who, we equally used to ambush them, to be able to get certain answers out of their presentations. And I think at the end of the presentations by the promoters of the bill, the external promoters of the bills who came into the parliament and those within the parliament, we arrived at a certain level of consensus. And that spirit of consensus has equally been going around, and it is also going to be displayed today, when we meet again today.
What was this consensus, if you could tell us a little bit about it?
Yes, the consensus that we have reached is that the bills are good for the progress and economic sustenance of this nation, that the bills are well thought out, patriotic. Taiwo Ogundele, the promoter of that bill, Oyedele, the promoter of that bill, and the FRS chairman, during the presentation, we saw, a high level of patriotism behind what they have done. And they were also able to address the fears of many Nigerians, particularly people from,
Northern governors?
The northern governors, I think what they did at that time, they didn't study the bill, they just rushed, to make those statements that they made. And even those who took the document before the National Economic Council didn't do what the House of Representatives has done. Because what we have done is to have a full understanding of these documents before the parliament. And that's exactly what stands out the 10th House of Representatives from others. We are doing things differently under the inspiration and guidance of our leader, the Right Honorable Tajuddin Abbas, to ensure that beyond regional interests, beyond religious interests, parliament is about consensus building for nation building, growth and development. So it goes beyond your political inclination. Today you are going to see that some of the supporters of the bill, are going to be people from other political parties or even people from the north. Because the things that we didn't know about this bill before now, these guys came before the parliament and they were able to explain it, word by word. What did we do as a parliament? We ensured that every member, got a copy of each of the bill, even before that debate. For instance, today we are going to have the second reading of that bill, of those bills today. And we have already engaged experts. We've already had discussions around it. And after today's debate, we're still going into the next stage, which is, public hearing, to equally invite experts, Nigerians, and members of the Nigerian Governors Forum, members of the traditional institution, people who may still have, one or two doubts about the bills.
I mean, it's good that you said that you have a better understanding.
Yes.
Since you've studied it. All right. So let's look at what the contentious issue is here, because what the permutations are is that a lot of the lawmakers who are kicking against it are being told to kick against it by their governors. But let's talk about that part. Changing the sharing formula of value-added tax, reducing the federal government share from 15% to 10%, and the allocation among states will factor in the derivation principle. That is where the issue is. That is the bone of contention. Now, talk to us a bit, just so we can understand it.
Yes.
The derivation principle that many people are kicking against, what does that entail?
Who does not want more money? If the federal government, under the leadership of President Bola Ahmed Ashwaju, it's saying that the federal government share of this revenue derivation should be reduced, are we not supposed to commend such a president for that level of patriotism? A president ordinarily who should be telling Nigerians that I need more money to be able to carry out more projects is now saying, what do we do to ensure that more money gets to other tiers of government to ensure that we further develop the country? And the issue of derivation,
because that's the caveat on this VAT bill, this VAT part of the bill. This is the caveat on it, and that's what people are kicking against.
Now, they have forgotten that in this bill that we have today, apart from the one that is going to strengthen the Federal Inland Revenue Service and further to strengthen the state inland revenue services for prudency, for accountability, for transparency, we're equally talking about double, triple, multiple transactions on VAT issues. For instance, the man who is producing water has been taxed. You buy the water from him, you are also taxed. The water is taken to an event center for a program, the water is further taxed. And we have this VAT on commodities that ordinarily should not be taxed in the first instance.
I understand that, but you've left the bill, so you've left the one that we're talking about. The multiple taxation bit is one that has been explained. The derivation bit is where we wanted you to please help us understand.
Yes, it is very, very important because from questions and analysis on the bills that we have done. We have equally seen that, for instance, the issue of the headquarters syndrome in the old tax system, where Lagos, Port Harcourt, FCT, and maybe one other state are getting over 70% of the VAT. The new bills that we have today on the issue of derivation, people are just a little bit concerned, and some of the people who have expressed opinions on these things are saying that because some states in some parts of the country are experiencing insecurity, they are not able to bring. But for some of us who have also digested this document and are totally in conformity with it and are proud to support it in the interest of our generation and the future of this country, is the fact that this is going to address some abnormalities that have taken place. And the bill seek, to provide the big brother, the brotherhood of the nation state that we profess, because these states that have been taking bogus allocations are now going to shed some of what they've been taking, and it will also be given to other states that have not been having this money. So it is in the interest. So if we are all Nigerians, I want to quote the Federal Inland Revenue Service chairman. He said each day he wakes up in the morning to share the taxes of this country and sees that 4 states get over 70% of the tax money. His heart bleeds. He's unable to sleep because that does not promote the sense of patriotism. And for us in the House of Representatives, our prayer, every day when we commence our legislative activity, we pray and ask God to guide us, to lead us, to do the things that are right, that are in the interest of this country, the things that will be fair to one another. And it is in doing this that the People's Parliament, the House of Representatives, as it is today, many of us, like you see later during the day, during the second reading, are in total support of the bills before the Parliament. Even some persons have been threatened, by their own state governors. Okay, for instance, I'll use my state as an example. The governor has used clandestine means, to reach members of the Benue caucus. And we said, no, we are members of the same political party.
What was he asking?
That the bill should not be supported.
Did he reach you?
Yes, through his people. And when they reached us as a caucus just last night, we took a decision between the interest of an individual and the interest of our children's children. Tomorrow, what are we going to say to them if we continue in this direction? And you see, if you look at performing governors, some of the performing stars of this country who are governors today, they are not complaining about the bill. Have you heard a word from Governor Bago, who is busy industrializing and promoting agriculture in his state? Because the more you produce, the more money you are going to generate. So it is now time for our governors to go back and begin to use their heads. They should know that one day the crude oil money and the taxes we get from MTN and all these multinationals, one day they will not be there. Before these things came on board, we were generating money. What has happened to cocoa? What has happened to yams from Zakibiam? What has happened to the gold mining in Zafra and all these states? We have no reason, we have no basis to complain. Let us all come together, support these bills, engage experts, sit down. Look at them critically like the House of Representatives has done. And we see how we can bet a new nation where taxation is an important business globally everywhere in the world.
We've seen bills that have been before the floor, been on the floor, and governors reached out to their members, and such bills didn't pass in time past. So what about if other governors have reached out to their members? Can you guarantee that they all will be patriotic and say, no, we will pass this?
I can confirm to you, this parliament, under the leadership of Right Honorable Tajuddin Abbas, we are different. We are patriots.
You're still politicians.
Yes, we are politicians. We are patriots. We are intellectually sound. We believe in the future of our country. And that is why the 10th House of Representatives will be doing things differently. I can tell you, yes, you don't expect the same level of patriotism to be demonstrated by every member of the parliament. But a good example is the fact that today, Right Honorable Tajuddin Abbas is running one of the most complicated parliaments in the history of this country. For the first time, we are having 8 political parties in one parliament. And it is in that same parliament that you have, peaceful, you can see this a level of cooperation between parliamentarians in terms of supporting issues that promote the building, the growth and development of the country.
Are you saying this about your governor because maybe you guys don't see eye to eye politically?
He's my governor. I love him so much. I worked for him. I voted for him. What many of us, you see, this is a grace period for all of us. Our interest is to do things right. The things that will be in the interest of our country. The things that will be in the interest of the future of our children. And for me as a patriot, even if you are my friend, you are my brother, or you are my father, having taken this oath of office to serve the interests of my country, for the next 2 to 3 years that I'm going to be in this parliament, I will divorce my relationship with such a person. So it is not about me. It is not about any individual parliamentarian in the 10th House of Representatives. It is not about anybody's relationship with anybody. It is not even about people's relationship with their political parties. It is about tomorrow. It is about our future. It is about what Nigerians will say about the period of time that God, in His mercy, gave us the privilege to be in the parliament. It is about our story. It is about our history. So it is not about any primordial sentiment. It is not about any political leaning. Right Honorable Tajuddin Abbas, as a leader of the House of Representatives, has been able to, indoctrinate us into his own philosophy of building a nation where patriotism, where there is love, where there is unity. And that's exactly what we are doing.
All right, so we're looking forward to that because the debate is going to continue today in the House. And so you said there's going to be a public hearing eventually.
Yes. You see, these are the things we do, the things that stand us out as a parliament. Of course, you have the laid down parliamentary procedures for lawmaking, which is the first reading, the second reading, the public hearing, and later you return back for the third reading. Now, what we do as a parliament for in the 10th House of Representatives is to expand public debates, especially to give room, and that's why we christen the parliament as the people's house, to allow a wide range of stakeholders, to come in and make their contributions. And we don't just stop there. Okay, like the issue of appropriation. When we receive bills on appropriation, we don't just go in, scrutinize, and pass. We invite members of the public to come in and make their input because they have a right, to contribute to the lawmaking process. It is their country. And we have pledged that the 10th House of Representatives, under the leadership of His Excellency Right Honorable Tajuddin Abbas, will do everything humanly possible to be seen to be doing only the things, that are in the interest of the masses of our country. So if you don't invite the masses to come in, if you don't allow them, remember that Mr. President, in his rejection of the NEC advisory, said, please, let us allow the parliamentary process to run its full course. At the course of public hearing, we're expecting, of course, the governors, the ones that are bold enough to say we are challenging these bills and these are our reasons, to come forward during public hearing. We will give them room. We will even usher some of them into, the plenary if the House so wish, to have them make their contribution so that Nigerians too will see and know what they are talking about. But to issue a blanket statement and say this bill is wrong, you are not advancing any reason for why you are kicking against the bill. No, I think that is not right. It will not serve the interest of a better nation.
All right, so we'll anchor at that point and let you get back to the business of the House because it's going to continue much later today. We do thank you for your time this morning.
It's a pleasure.
Honorable Philip Agbesa, Deputy Chairman, House Committee on Information.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so I think we can use his words this time. I say, let us usher Ayo into our own plenary.
Hi, Ayo. Welcome back.
I can see that the eyes already have it. Don't they? Well,
welcome
you guys
back.
Welcome back.
Yeah, thank you guys. Yeah, I mean, you guys, I don't know. I didn't. How do you guys cope with these issues in the country? I mean,
well, we have the interest of the nation at heart.
He's been away for a little bit of, you don't know. It's so stressful. Welcome.
We have the interest of this country at heart.
So, I can see that.
Who said too, We will not let any governor tell us to say the nays have it.
It's good to be back, guys. Thank you so much for the welcome.
So, let me just quickly read this message. He says, it's from Pastor Law Alpha. He says, the EFCC chairman spoke about the judiciary recently and was called out and maligned, but the facts remain that the judiciary has become the platform where corrupt and desperate politicians lay hands on to massage their ego for selfish political gain. So I'm sure we spared you of this headache while you were on leave with all of this back and forth. But, you know, it's like you never left because the issues are still the issues right here.
Well, most certainly, Chamberlain, the issues are not just going to go away simply because we desire for them to go away. If we don't address them, as you often say, Chamberlain, there are issues that will come back to bite us in the butt if we don't address them the way we ought to address them. And it's not wishful thinking. What gladdens my heart is that there's hardly any Nigerian who doesn't know what's going on in other parts of the world. Oh yes, it may look like the grass is greener on the other side, but you also know that the stories we hear from other climes is that it's not that things are just so, you know, rosy everywhere else. They're having their issues. But look, I'm not concerned about what's happening in the other room. I'm concerned about what's happening in my room, in my own space, in my own environment, in my own enclave. And that is why these issues continue to be a bother. Glad to know that some developments have started happening, whichever way we want to look at it. At least the NNPCL is now glad to celebrate that the Port Harcourt Refinery is functional right now. How we scale this up, I guess time will tell. But you see, that tax bit, still a little confusing, isn't it?
Just try and listen to the second reading. Then there will be public hearing, and then it will go back, as he said too. So just follow through all of those, and then you get some more, but you need to keep it locked here at channels. We'll break it down for you as much as we can.
And then just to buttress that point, you know, the plenary will be live on several platforms, so you can watch that. And just a correction for what we saw on so many media platforms yesterday, they said it was a public hearing. It wasn't a public hearing. The public hearing will be coming subsequently. But just so you can hear what the debates are, what the issues are, it'll be interesting for us to listen to exactly what will be debated today at the Senate floor.
So there you go.
And the House of Reps floor. Yes.
Okay, so there you have it. That wraps up the show today. It's not Friday yet because we will see you tomorrow, all the same. So it's one more day to go for the week. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time. I'm Chamberlain, so goodbye.
Have a great day ahead. I'm Kayla Magwa.
And I'm Ayo Makinde. Have a wonderful day.